My brother demanded $15,000 for his destination wedding after I lost my job. When I refused, he uninvited me and publicly shamed me. His wife said just put it on a credit card. Now his marriage fell apart. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger brother Marcus, 28M. We grew up supporting each other through everything, especially after our dad passed away when we were teenagers. Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, and Marcus and I became each other's support system. I helped him with homework, drove him to soccer practice, and later helped pay for some of his college textbooks when money was tight. So when he got engaged to his girlfriend Lisa 6 months ago, I was genuinely thrilled for him. I thought he had found someone who would make him happy, someone who would be a good partner to him. The problem started when they announced their wedding plans. They wanted a destination wedding in Bali. The venue looked stunning in the photos Marcus showed me, right on the beach with these gorgeous traditional decorations. When Marcus first told me about it, I congratulated them enthusiastically and asked about all the details, where they'd have the ceremony, how many guests they were inviting, what the timeline looked like. That's when he casually mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he expected me to contribute $15,000 toward the wedding costs. I actually laughed at first because I genuinely thought he was joking. Marcus had always had a sense of humor, and I figured this was just him being dramatic about wedding expenses. But his face stayed completely serious. He didn't even crack a smile. He explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world, that since I was his only sibling and didn't have kids of my own, I should be able to easily invest in his special day. He reminded me that I had a good job in tech and made decent money, probably more than he did in his sales position. He said that Lisa's sister was contributing $10,000, so it was only fair that I matched or exceeded that amount to show that our family was just as supportive. What Marcus didn't know yet, what nobody in the family knew yet, was that I had been laid off 3 weeks earlier. My entire department had been eliminated in a restructuring. I hadn't told the family yet because I was still processing it myself and didn't want to worry anyone, especially Mom who already had enough stress in her life. I had severance that would last a few months, but I was being extremely careful with every penny while sending out resumes and going to interviews. I took a deep breath and told him as gently as I could that I couldn't contribute that amount. I didn't want to get into the specifics about my job right there in that moment. He looked completely stunned, like I had slapped him across the face. Then his expression shifted to annoyance. He asked why not, his voice taking on this edge I'd never heard directed at me before. He said that I'd always been there for him before, that I'd helped him out so many times, so why was I suddenly being like this? I tried to explain that my financial situation had changed recently and I simply couldn't afford it, that $15,000 was more than I could spare right now. Marcus didn't take it well at all. His face got red and he said I was being selfish, that family was supposed to show up for each other in big moments like this. I reminded him, trying to stay calm, that $15,000 was an enormous amount of money to ask for, regardless of anyone's situation. That was a used car, that was a down payment on a small condo in some cities, that was a significant chunk of someone's annual salary. He stood up from my couch, grabbed his jacket, and left my apartment angry. He didn't even say goodbye. I knew immediately that this wasn't over, that this was just the beginning of something uglier. Update 1. Over the next week, Marcus went completely silent. No texts, no calls, nothing. It was like I didn't exist. I tried reaching out twice to see if we could talk things through, but he left me on read both times. Then our mom called me one evening, and I could tell immediately from her voice that she was upset. Apparently Marcus had told her that I had refused to help with his wedding because I didn't approve of Lisa, that I had some kind of problem with her and was using money as an excuse to not support their marriage. That was completely and utterly untrue. I had absolutely nothing against Lisa. Sure, I didn't know her super well since they'd only been together for a year and a half, but she seemed nice enough and Marcus was happy, and that was what mattered to me. I explained to Mom what really happened, the actual conversation we'd had, and I also told her for the first time that I'd lost my job. She was sympathetic about the job loss, made all the right supportive sounds, but then after a pause she also said that maybe I could figure something out because this was Marcus's big day, his wedding, something that only happens once. She suggested maybe I could borrow from my retirement account or ask some friends for a loan. I felt the pressure mounting from all sides now. It wasn't just Marcus anymore. Then the family group chat absolutely exploded. Marcus had posted this long message about how he was disappointed in how some family members valued money over relationships and weren't willing to make sacrifices for the people they claimed to love. He didn't name me specifically, but it was crystal clear who he was talking about. Lisa chimed in within minutes with crying emojis and comments about how they just wanted their loved ones to celebrate with them and be part of their special day, and how hurtful it was when people made excuses. I stayed completely quiet in the chat. I wasn't going to defend myself publicly or announce my job loss to the entire extended family in some group message. That wasn't how I wanted people to find out. But I could see other family members jumping in, some defending Marcus and Lisa, others subtly trying to defuse the situation, a few asking what was actually going on. It was mortifying to watch. But then something unexpected happened. Marcus's best man, Jake, reached out to me privately through direct message. He told me that Marcus had been complaining to all the groomsmen about me over the past week, painting me as this wealthy, selfish sister who was withholding money out of pure spite, who had never liked Lisa and was trying to sabotage their wedding. Jake said he felt really weird about the whole situation and wanted to hear my side of the story because something didn't add up. Marcus was usually more reasonable than this. I told Jake the complete truth about losing my job, about the severance running out, about trying to find new employment in a tough market. He was genuinely shocked. He said Marcus had been telling everyone that I was flush with cash, that I'd just gotten a promotion actually, and that I was just being difficult and controlling because I wanted to make their wedding about me somehow. Jake promised to talk to Marcus and set him straight, but I told him not to bother. I said this was between Marcus and me, and that I didn't want to put Jake in an awkward position as the best man. He said he understood but that he thought Marcus was way out of line. Update 2. 2 weeks before the wedding was scheduled, I got a long text message from Lisa. She started by saying she understood that times were tough for everyone and that she wasn't trying to pressure me, but then she went on to ask if I couldn't at least put the $15,000 on a credit card. She said they would totally pay me back within a year, maybe even sooner if Marcus got the promotion he was hoping for. She emphasized how much it would mean to Marcus and how deeply hurt he was by my refusal to help them. She said that the venue required final payment and they were short, and that my contribution would make the difference between having their dream wedding and having to scale everything back to something ordinary and disappointing. I was absolutely stunned by the audacity of the request. Put $15,000 on a credit card while unemployed? With no steady income and bills to pay? That was complete financial suicide. That would destroy my credit score, saddle me with high interest debt that would take years to pay off, and leave me completely vulnerable if any emergency came up. I responded as politely but firmly as I could that I couldn't take on that kind of debt, that it wasn't financially responsible or even possible for me given my current situation, and that I really hoped they would understand and find another solution. Lisa's response came quickly and it was ice cold. She said it was clear where my priorities were and that she and Marcus would remember this. She said that family was supposed to sacrifice for each other and that my refusal showed that I didn't really consider Marcus family, not in the way that mattered. She said that when she needed something from her sister came through without hesitation, and she didn't understand why I couldn't do the same. The wedding was now just 1 week away, and I still hadn't decided whether I was even going to attend. I had looked at flights and hotels, and I could technically afford it if I was very careful with my budget, but it would seriously deplete my savings at a time when I couldn't afford to be careless with money. More importantly, I wasn't sure I wanted to spend that money to be around people who clearly resented me and saw me as the villain of their story. Every dollar mattered right now, and spending potentially $2,000 on flights, accommodation, and other wedding expenses to go somewhere I wasn't wanted seemed foolish. I called my mom for advice, hoping she would give me some clarity or at least some emotional support. She sighed heavily when I explained my dilemma, and then she said something that absolutely crushed me. She said that maybe it was best if I didn't come, that my presence might create tension and make things uncomfortable for Marcus and Lisa on their special day. That hurt more than I expected. My own mother was essentially uninviting me to my brother's wedding to keep the peace, choosing Marcus's comfort over my feelings. I told her I'd think about it and hung up quickly before she could hear my voice break. I sat on my couch for a long time that evening, just staring at the wall, trying to process how things had gotten to this point. Update 3. After a lot of soul searching, I decided not to go to the wedding. I sent Marcus and Lisa a card with a $200 gift card inside, along with a handwritten note expressing my congratulations and wishing them a lifetime of happiness together. I didn't explain my absence beyond saying I couldn't make it. I didn't want to get into explanations or justifications that would just turn into another argument. The day of the wedding, I turned off my phone completely and spent the entire day hiking at a state park about an hour from my apartment. I needed to clear my head, to be in nature, to not think about what I was missing or what people were saying about me. It was a beautiful day, sunny and clear, and I tried to focus on that instead of imagining the ceremony happening halfway around the world. When I turned my phone back on that evening, I had dozens and dozens of messages. Most were from extended family members who had apparently heard various versions of why I wasn't there. Some messages were accusatory, calling me selfish or asking how I could miss my own brother's wedding. Others were confused, asking if I was okay or if something had happened. A few cousins reached out privately to offer support, saying they didn't know the full story but they were thinking of me. Then I saw a long message from Jake, and I felt my stomach drop as I read it. He said the wedding had been beautiful, the venue was spectacular, everything had gone smoothly with the ceremony and reception. But then he told me that Marcus had made a toast during the reception dinner where he thanked everyone who actually showed up to support him, with what Jake described as a very pointed and obvious look at my empty seat at the family table. Lisa's maid of honor had apparently made a comment during her speech about knowing who your real family is and how important it was to surround yourself with people who truly cared. Jake said the atmosphere had gotten awkward and uncomfortable, and several people had asked him what was going on. I felt physically sick reading it. This was my little brother, the kid I'd protected and helped raise, and we had come to this. He was publicly shaming me at his own wedding, turning what should have been a celebration into an opportunity to hurt me. I didn't respond to any of the messages. I just turned my phone off again and went to bed. Update 4. Marcus and Lisa returned from their honeymoon 3 weeks later. I didn't hear from them directly, which wasn't surprising at this point, but I heard through the family grapevine that they were still angry with me and telling people I had tried to ruin their wedding. Some relatives were taking sides, the family was fracturing over this, and I found myself dreading any family gathering or holiday coming up. Then something completely unexpected happened. I got a job offer. After months of interviews and rejections and anxiety, I finally got an offer from a company I'd been talking with. It was actually a better position than my previous job, with a significant raise in salary and better benefits. I accepted immediately, feeling this enormous weight lift off my shoulders. I could breathe again. I could plan for the future instead of just surviving day to day. A few days after I started the new job, Marcus texted me out of the blue asking if we could meet for coffee. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him feel what it was like to be shut out. But another part of me, the part that remembered growing up together and being close, was curious about what he wanted to say. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my new office. When we met, he looked uncomfortable and tired. His eyes had dark circles under them, and he fidgeted with his coffee cup constantly. He started by making small talk about my new job, congratulations and all that, and then he said that Jake had told him about my job loss. Apparently Jake had felt guilty keeping it from him after everything that happened and had finally confessed that he'd known for months. Marcus said he wished I had told him sooner, that he would have understood and never asked for the money if he'd known I was in that position. I looked at him directly and said that I had told him I couldn't afford it. I had said clearly that my financial situation had changed. I hadn't owed him a detailed explanation beyond that, and the fact that he had immediately assumed I was just being selfish and spiteful said everything about how he viewed me and our relationship. The fact that he needed to know I'd lost my job to believe that I genuinely couldn't give him $15,000 was insulting. Marcus got defensive immediately, his voice rising slightly as he said that I should have been honest with him, that I should have just told him the truth instead of being vague. I reminded him, keeping my voice level, that asking for $15,000 was already completely over the line, employed or not. That wasn't a reasonable request between siblings. And that turning my refusal into a family-wide drama, making me the villain in his story, publicly shaming me at his wedding, those were all his choices. I hadn't made him do any of that. We sat in tense silence for a long moment, both of us staring at our coffee cups. Then he asked if I'd gotten the wedding photos they'd sent to the family group chat. I said I hadn't looked at them, that I'd muted the chat. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight, and said he was sorry about the toast and the empty chair thing. He said he'd been hurt and angry and hadn't handled it well, that he'd let Lisa influence him too much in the moment. I told him I was sorry too, sorry that money had become more important to him than our relationship. He started to protest, saying that wasn't fair, but I held up my hand. I said I needed time and space to figure out if we could move past this, if I even wanted to try. He looked like he wanted to argue but instead just nodded and said he understood. Update 5. It's been 3 months since that coffee meeting, and things have been slowly evolving. Marcus and I have texted occasionally, mostly superficial stuff about holidays coming up or mom's health or other family news. Nothing deep, nothing that addresses the elephant in the room. I went to mom's birthday dinner last month, and he was there with Lisa. It was awkward and stilted, with everyone being overly polite and careful about what they said. Lisa actually pulled me aside at one point and apologized for the credit card suggestion. She said wedding planning had made her crazy and she regretted putting that kind of pressure on me. I appreciated the apology, even though it didn't erase what had happened or repair the damage that had been done. The truth is, I'm not sure our relationship will ever be what it was before. Something fundamental broke between Marcus and me that I don't know how to fix or if it even can be fixed. He showed me that when I couldn't give him what he wanted, when I had to prioritize my own survival and well-being, I became the villain in his story. He was willing to throw away our entire relationship, all those years of closeness and support, over money. That's incredibly hard to forget or forgive. But then, about 2 weeks ago, something else happened that put everything in a new perspective. Marcus called me late at night, which was unusual. When I answered, he sounded terrible. His voice was shaky and strained. He told me that he and Lisa were having serious problems. Apparently the money issues hadn't ended with the wedding. They'd gone significantly over budget on the wedding and honeymoon, putting a lot of it on credit cards, and now they were drowning in debt. They were fighting constantly about money, about who was responsible for the overspending, about how to dig themselves out of the hole they'd created. Lisa had apparently told him that if he'd gotten the money from me like he should have, they wouldn't be in this mess. She was blaming him for not convincing me, for not forcing the issue harder. Marcus sounded devastated as he told me this. He said he was realizing that maybe he'd been wrong about a lot of things, that maybe the wedding itself had been a mistake, that they'd prioritized this one big expensive day over their actual future together. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say I told you so, to point out that this was exactly what happens when you spend money you don't have on things you can't afford. But he sounded so broken that I couldn't bring myself to kick him when he was down. Instead, I asked him what he needed from me right now, in this moment. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he just needed his sister back. He said he'd been an idiot, that he'd let Lisa's family's expectations and his own pride cloud his judgment, that he'd treated me terribly and he knew it. He said he didn't expect me to forgive him or to go back to how things were, but that he missed me and he was sorry. I told him I missed him too, which surprised me even as I said it. But it was true. Despite everything, despite the hurt and anger, I missed my brother. I told him we could talk, really talk, but that it would take time to rebuild trust. I also told him, as gently as I could, that he and Lisa needed to figure out their financial situation and their marriage issues, that those weren't problems I could solve for them. Update 6. Over the following weeks, Marcus and I started talking more regularly. Real conversations, not just surface-level updates. He opened up about how the financial stress was destroying his marriage, how Lisa seemed to resent him constantly, how they'd started sleeping in separate rooms. He also told me, with obvious shame, that Lisa's sister had apparently only contributed $5,000 to the wedding, not $10,000 like Lisa had told him. Lisa had lied to make it seem like her family was being more generous to pressure Marcus into getting more money from me. I was angry hearing that, but not surprised. The whole situation had been built on unrealistic expectations and manipulation. I asked Marcus why he'd gone along with it, why he'd let it get so far. He said he'd been caught up in wanting to make Lisa happy, in wanting to prove he could provide for her and give her the wedding she dreamed about. He'd tied his self-worth to his ability to make this wedding happen, and when I couldn't contribute, it had felt like a rejection of him as a person. That conversation was hard but necessary. We talked for hours about family, about money, about expectations and boundaries. I told him that I'd felt betrayed by how quickly he'd turned me into the enemy, how he'd let Lisa and her family dictate our relationship. He admitted that he'd been weak, that he should have stood up for me, that he'd prioritized being a good husband to be over being a good brother.